Welcome to Using Your Teacher Voice, episode 11. It's been a week or so, a couple weeks actually, since I've recorded. I need to get back in the swing of it. Kind of the end of the semester gets a little crazy. It's hard to carve out time to work on things. But I'm back today, and I want to talk a little bit about some things to help educators teach digital citizenship. I think all educators realize the importance of digital citizenship and helping students understand the digital media landscape. These are things not only for schools, not only to help them, navigate, the landscape of school, but also it's kind of important for after school because, this is this is the way the world is now. This is the way that things are. And this is a real world skill that our students are going to need to know. They're going to need to be able to manage this. And so when teachers go out and they try to give these lessons on digital citizenship, these are lessons not just for school, but really for life that the students can be able to use. The first thing that you as an educator can do to help yourself teach digital citizenship in your classroom is first to be aware. What are the apps that are out there? How are they used? What do they look like? And really, how do and why do the students use them? Um, it is an ever-moving target. Our students are moving from one app to another very quickly. For a number of reasons, they keep moving. But it's important for us to realize what's out there because it is a reflection of them and what their needs and wants and desires are. And it's also because it just helps you be aware of what's out there and kind of the challenges that you're about to take. I know I used to question, like, why are they always taking so many selfies? Why are they taking so many pictures of themselves or pictures of random things and their friends? And then I realized, well, that they were using Snapchat as their texting program. They were, in Snapchat, you take a picture and you add a little caption. So you need that picture to start with. And just understanding that kind of like, okay, so I see what they're doing. Now wasn't thinking they were just being, kind of self-absorbed, but they were actually talking to somebody else. So it gave me a little insight on what they were doing. Um, it also, I think, is important is to be aware of and to understand why students do the things that they do online. I used to do these panel discussions where I'd ask students to come in and we would look at different posts that were out there and I'd ask them, how would you respond to this? The question wasn't how should you or what should you do if you see this, but it was how would you respond? It was very enlightening because the students didn't always pick the things we wanted them to do, but they had very specific reasons for doing the things that they did. For instance, one of the examples I had was Sarah walks out of her math class and tweets out, that teacher is such a perv. And a lot of Sarah's friends would interact with that tweet, liking it, favoring it, retweeting it, maybe even making comments on it afterwards. Um, we would, as adults and educators, kind of like, yeah, that's not okay. You can't say things like that about people. But for the students, there was a couple things going on there. First off, they knew the story. They knew who she was talking about. And so they felt comfortable because interacting with that because they weren't directly aiming that at somebody. Now, if Sarah put, my math teacher is such a perv, well then, yes, they would, fewer of the students, several would, but fewer of the students would interact with that. Because now, as they would say, that's low-key bullying, that's harassment, that's slanderous statement. If she put Mr. Jones, then almost no student would touch it. They might interact with it on a different level, meaning they might direct message Sarah, or they might tweet out something else saying, Sarah's throwing out hot ones today, or, Sarah's on point today. They might do something different with it, but they understand that as soon as the name is involved, the more identifiable this person is, or even, specifically the name, that crosses the line and that becomes bullying. Or harassment. And so again, our students were making the decisions that we wanted them to make, but they had very clear reasons as to why. It was also interesting to see that, let's say that Sarah did use that person's name or made a comment about another student. The students that did interact with that and, like, way to go, Sarah, gotcha, Sarah, yeah, preach on, true, if they would put those kinds of comments on there, it wasn't so much to pile on, and to bash on this person, but it's really a show of support for Sarah. And, like, yeah, Sarah, you're right, and I support you, and I'll help you out or back you up. So again, I think it's important for us educators to be very aware of, what's out there, how it's being used, and then, how the students approach that technology. The next thing that you can do as an educator to help you teach digital citizenship in your classes is really to model that. And that sounds kind of obvious, but there's a lot of things that we can do on a daily basis just to reinforce that idea. Obviously, getting on, having an online presence and allowing students to interact with you, that's a great first step. You can model appropriate behavior. Now, I understand that, different districts have different rules about that. And there is some comfort level there that needs to be, that you need to be comfortable letting students into that kind of your life. It could be as easy as starting a Facebook page for your class where you just kind of post out information or pictures or something. Or maybe it's an Instagram where you're sending out pictures of class, activities or whatever. But there are ways of doing that and getting started. There's different levels. You don't have to be all in. But start with that online presence so that students can see how to act online appropriately. From there, then, I think it's important for us to model how to use the internet appropriately. Don't use copyrighted images. Make sure that the images you're using are copyright free. Say that. Show that. Make that a habit of when you take that picture and you put it in your PowerPoint, that is a copyright-free image, that is an image that is able to be used by you, and put the link on there and show that. I think it's so easy for educators for so long to say, well, this is for educational use, so it doesn't really have to be copyright-free. And there is a little bit of truth in that. I mean, I think as a blanket statement, no. There are provisions for education and copyright. But I think we should start teaching that's not an excuse. That's not a blind that we can hide behind. Using sources appropriately, showing how to find sources, showing how to pick apart a source and saying this is a valid source and this isn't. All these things that are like media literacy, they all go together into understanding how to use the internet appropriately. I think the final thing that I would suggest that teachers could do to help themselves teach digital citizenship is to not do a one and done type of lesson. That this isn't a lesson that's a check in the box. Like, okay, everybody put away your books. Today we're going to do a lesson on how to be good online. Do the lesson, turn it in. Okay, great. Now let's go back to the book. That shouldn't be, first off, that shouldn't be the way we teach everything. Everything should be integrated into real life and show those real world connections. But the idea that we can just teach a lesson and then walk away from it is kind of difficult. We should be able to weave that into our curriculum. Now, obviously, some are easier than others, okay? But use them as teaching points. Use them as starting points. In English classes, you can talk about these things, discuss about the things, and then they could respond to that in writing. Or they could research an example. You talk about a situation, then research something. Another example of that, or, an etiquette, how to respond to these things. And again, it is harder to weave it into certain classes than it is others. But there are a lot of things out there that are usable for you. For instance, the story of Janine Sacco. She was the UN PR person that tweeted out some disparaging comments as she got onto a plane in London. And 12 hours later, when she landed in South Africa, what she had said had exploded. The fact that she only had 150 followers, and in 12 hours, her tweet had been interacted with something like 1.2 million times. There's a math lesson there. And so, you could start with that in a math class. You could start with that story. You could talk a little bit about, what do you think about that? Is that appropriate or not? Why would this have been such an issue? And then, okay, how could this thing blow up so quickly? You only had 150 followers. How many followers do you have? And then you can start doing the math. It's okay, well, if this had 150 at that same rate, if she had 150 at that same rate with your 600, how many people would interact with that in 12 hours? So, I think that you could develop that into a lesson. So again, I think that we as educators understand the challenges in front of us. I think we see how important it is for us to be teaching digital citizenship. I think it's just now a matter of making ourselves comfortable with it, finding ways to do it effectively, and get that lesson across to us. Thanks so much. Look forward to hearing your comments below or responses.